For those of us that are here, I'm planning on going through the 4 presentations before we start doing Q&A. So I've Good morning. Welcome to this ADEX webinar on the Coral Triangle. My name is Julian Hyde. I'll be the moderator of this session this morning. I'm the General Manager of WWF-Malaysia. We're involved in marine conservation around Southeast Asia, and we have several other people in the field joining us today. Today, if you didn't know, is Coral Triangle Day, which was first celebrated in 2012, and it aims to celebrate and raise awareness about the Coral Triangle, which is considered to be the global epicenter of marine biodiversity. What exactly do we mean by the Coral Triangle? Let me just give you some basic figures. There are 6 countries in the Coral Triangle: Philippines in the north, Malaysia in the west, Indonesia in the south and east, Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands. Combined population of about 400 million people. It has more than 30% of the world's reefs, which, when you consider how small that area is in global terms, is a lot. The Coral Triangle is home to 76% of the world's coral species and 30% of all coral reef fishes. It's home to 6 of 7 of the world's turtle species. In addition, it's important economically. Estimates are that fisheries exports generate $3 billion a year, and coastal tourism is also worth about $3 billion a year. Obviously, there's more to it than these simple figures reveal. So we have a group of experts this morning who have many years of experience working in the region to tell us more about it, tell us why it's important, and what challenges they are facing in conserving this important resource. This morning, we are joined by, please forgive me for any errors in pronouncing their names, Hesti Widodo from the Coral Triangle Center in Indonesia. Dr. Norasma Dacho from Department of Fisheries Sabah will hopefully be joining us a little later on. She's obviously having problems with connections. Monique Sumampouw from WWF-Malaysia, and Mr. Klass Teule from WWF in Indonesia. I'll do a little bit more introduction later on. It's not about me. I want to get to the speakers as soon as possible. So just before we do get started, some brief house rules, just in case we do start to get a lot of people joining. I'm going to keep my remarks very brief. I'll just give each participant a one-line introduction, so please don't think I'm being rude. We can find out more about them if we need to. Secondly, I will ask our experts to speak on their subject for 5 minutes. I hope we can try and stick to 5 minutes more or less. And finally, I'd like to save questions until the end of the presentations. Please put your questions in the chat function. We will pick those questions up and ask the specialists about them a little later on, once we get around to it. So, without further ado, the first speaker is Hesti Widodo. Hesti is a senior program manager at the Coral Triangle Center based in Bali. Her work now focuses on capacity development in the field of marine and coastal management. So she's training marine park managers, community members, and so on how marine parks actually work. Here she is. She's going to talk to us about the Coral Triangle, what it is, and the work that she's involved in conserving the area's marine resources. Hesti, over to you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen first. Hope it's going all right. Okay, so let's start. I'm Hesti Widodo from Coral Triangle Center. I'm going to talk about enhancing capacity for marine conservation in the Coral Triangle. As you've seen in a video previously for 3 minutes video, it tells about what is Coral Triangle. And this is actually the bullseye, we call it the bullseyes of marine biodiversity in the world, in which if you look at the map here, the dark red is actually showing the highest marine biodiversity compilation of the coral reefs species, which is more than 500 species found here and more than 3,000 fish species, but also mangrove and seagrass are found here. And this is the Amazon of the sea. And for the last more than a decade now, the 6 countries has been working together for conserving this area, sustaining the coastal resources for coral reef fish food security. And actually the area is the home for more than 3,000 species. And if you try to find coral reefs in the world, 76 are here, 76% are found here, and it's generate 1.6 billion income for local community. But the area actually finds common threats from unsustainable fishing, like bomb cyanide fishing still occurring. Irresponsible tourism is still happening, and also now we've been hearing a lot about marine debris and plastic pollutions. Let me introduce about Coral Triangle Center. We started in 2010. Our vision is actually for healthy seas that enrich people and nature. CTC mission is actually inspires and trains generation to care for coastal marine ecosystem, and we believe excellence, local stewardship, collaboration, and result. And we are official development partner of Coral Triangle Initiative, Coral Reef Fish Food Security since 2014. And this is our theory of change, or how we go through the process to make generation inspired to care for coastal marine ecosystem, healthy seas that enrich people and nature. We believe the Center for Marine Conservation actually the home for our work to support the raising awareness, to build the capacity, and also to work on our living lab for MPM learning site and learning network. And looking at the case study in Indonesia, we are targeting 32.5 million hectares MPA by 2030, which is, it is expected reaching the 10% of marine areas as agreed in Aichi target for convention biodiversity target. But actually what happened in Indonesia until now, we are still experience challenge in terms of managing this marine protected area. If you see the map, there are some red dots still in some of our MPAs. What does it mean? These MPAs are still not yet managed properly. And this is also the question of how effective we are in achieving our target in conserving marine biodiversity in Indonesia. And also it has been identified there are gaps in terms of achieving our target in sustaining marine resources in the Coral Triangle, but also in Indonesia, which is the gap in capacity. And at national level in Indonesia currently, together with other NGO partners, including WWF Indonesia, we work together with the government to help align long-term strategy and priorities for collaborative effort, including the Ministry of Marine Affairs, Planning Bureau, Finance Department, Maritime Affairs, and also our related partners, and also university, to look at the potential how we build, how we make our governance work, how we include other frameworks to work together to make sure the participation, and how to make an integrated planning, because the seas is not only there, we need to work also with the community working on the ground, and also there's planning, land planning that we need to get into our consideration. And also we want to also raise awareness about sustainable tourism, but also ensuring that sustainable financing existing on the ground. And at the national system for building the capacity, we work together with Ministry of Marine Affairs for building the roadmap, establishing a roadmap for MPA personnel capacity, and also making a professional competency certification system to ensure that those who are working on MPA there have the capacity how to do it, and they know the function that they will play in a role, and make sure that they are taking care of their marine protected area. And this is the way how we conducted the work in our work. Actually, since 2011, CTC have been trained 5,050 participants. This is not only the MPA personnel, but also those stakeholders working in MPA, in establishing MPA from the beginning, or when we start initiating the MPA. There are 26 training modules that we develop, but also we capture all the information, the database of this training for the sake of monitoring evaluation, and catch up later with the alumni for continuous support. Sorry. And then if you look at the map here, where we are working in Indonesia and also in Timor-Leste, the closest one is Nusa Penida MPA, and we also, this is in the Lesser Sunda, and also two in Timor-Leste, which is Likisa and Atauro Island. And in the Banda Seascape, we work in Banda Island MPA Network, Buano, and Lease MPA in Maluku Province. And another one is actually North Maluku, which is Sula MPA, which is a sanctuary for turtle. In these two locations, we call it living lab of the work of MPA. We call it MPA field learning sites. This is Nusa Penida. Even though Mola Mola, maybe some of you have heard of, this is the location that you can always find Mola fish, Mola Ramsey, and also Banda Island and Marine Protected Area Network. We've been working there since 2012, and we work with the community for reviving SASI, the traditional management system. And this is the new 6 MPAs that we are working on. We are still supporting the establishment of the MPA management, not yet there, but we are positive that soon we will get this area announced and initiated and officiated. Also, we work in the learning network for the couple years. We've been working for supporting CTI CFF Women Leaders Forum, and we've been through 3 stages of the supporting the Women Leaders Forum, building, bringing all the women practitioners working in conservation and inspiring others to really voicing out their message about conservation. And also in terms of building the local government network, this is a network that now quite independent. They established their own organization now, which is one of the thing that success factor that we have to consider. And also we work with private sector and sustainable marine tourism, inspiring the work, how we work together with the dive operators, how inspiring them and making together agreed on code of conduct in doing the marine sustainable marine tourism. And this is one of the initiatives that we've been working for the last 1 year to almost 2 years now with Greenfin Initiative, which aims to protect and conserve coral reef through environmentally friendly guidelines that promote sustainable diving and snorkeling industries. This is voluntary system and it's supported by United Nations Environment Program. And we have Center of Marine Conservation, and this is a center for us to build raising awareness, bring a campaign that gouging for local to global one. And in terms of, we've heard a lot of marine debris and plastic pollution. This is some of the fact that we found out that Indonesia is actually one of the big contributor for the plastic waste in the sea, and some of the plastic waste in the ocean is actually from the discarded and lost fishing nets and plastic debris. And what we're doing here with the Center for Marine Conservation, actually, we work for youth outreach program, inspiring them from the young age to really working together how to support their marine environment through education also. And also we work with the community in eastern part of Indonesia to recycle ghost net. And we also here, because we are in Bali, Indonesia, we're very strong in terms of culture, and we combine art and science with the wayang performance, bringing message. And also we have the coral universe installation, which is the coral reefs actually in the wall. If you see the Sylvia Earle actually come visit us, and it was like a wow moment also for us. And we combine also with the Ogo. If you look at that, the Baruna Murti is the god of the sea that actually protect, and he's showing the anger because of the plastic coming to the sea. And also we have game for
Hesti,
change.
let me stop you there for a second, because we need to move on. Is there anything particularly you want to say, or should we move on to Monique and we'll carry on during this discussion later? Anything particularly you want to finish off with, or can we move on?
I think this is only the last one, that the game of change, how to raise awareness, including having the escape room of plastic dangers and SOS from the deep. This is a thing that the new approach that we use for inspiring others to to take care of their oceans.
That looks scary.
You
That
can
looks pretty
try.
scary. No, I think I'll let the younger ones, I think I'll leave that one to the younger generation. Okay, thank you, Hesti, for outlining the work. It's a big area. Obviously, there's an awful lot of work to do. I'm going to invite Monique from WWF to speak next. Monique is the head of WWF-Malaysia's marine programs. She's a specialist in marine conservation and marine spatial planning. She's been very much involved with marine conservation and marine parks in Sabah. Monique, tell us a bit about your work.
Thank you, Julian. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all healthy as our coral, as colorful as our coral, hopefully. And yes, I will start with the resources use, opportunity, threat, and challenges that we are all facing in all our all day anyway. But we also have some challenges and also threat in the quite similar area that we are facing on fisheries, on the settlement, coastal area, marine tourism, and also the sorry in bahasa.
Kamu ambil dari mana?
So
Dari laut.
this kit are from the community there. It's very so it's also an issue in here.
Ini
But I will just give one example about our work, that what works, as Julian mentioned. If we better discuss on what works and what doesn't work in here, I will leave what doesn't work in the discussion. But what works that I'm going to strengthen in here, for example, I will give one example only because 5 minutes is not enough to tell everything. So fish bombing, I'm going to use a fish bombing case in Semporna. So we have a seismic detection in Semporna that we install in some of the area. And here are the graph that we collecting the data from 2018 until 2019. So as you can see from 2018, the yellow one bar and the orange bar, it's significantly decreased based on our detection data that we also work together with the Ocean Defender in Hong Kong. So this is one of a good example that I think they know us, they know probably what we are doing there. So and in returns, they are also afraid to be around that area. That this is also our area of locally marine managed area in Semporna. But apart from those fish bombing and other poverty and all the threat that we are facing in the area in Malaysia as well as in the Coral Triangle country, I believe, we also will suffer from the climate change impact, especially for the coral bleaching. In the 15 years, Sabah East area, including Tun Mustafa Park, as well as Semporna, will experience severe bleaching in here. And this is also not to mention that Semporna and Tawau area in the sea part box area that you see, that is also one of the highest sea level rise in Malaysia, according to the data. So what works in here, as I may say, so the left bottom there is a fish bombing detection unit that we install in at least 10 areas in Semporna, and also soon will be some areas also in TMP. That is the map where we can detect the fish bombing area, and also the innovation of how we collect the data for poaching, nesting, and turtle. So we use the handphone for recording for everyone, or at least the warden, to go on the ground and take their handphone, and with this application submit it directly, because at the past we are using manually with papers, with pen, and that will be gone by wave or by boat or rains. But with this handphone, everyone has handphone, so everyone can report it very fast. And also definitely awareness and education always, because that from there that we can speak and communicate with the people that doesn't understand that coral is a live animal, not a stone. Assessment, so study and data availability is always better for decision making, for transparency, and also better monitoring for strengthen law enforcement. Other things, we also doing partnership. Definitely, partnership is one of the key area that is very necessary, especially in working with the government, state government, federal government on planning as well, policy, management, and also how to ensure our management MPA is effective there. Also, community, not to forget that the community. I have one slide for an example on how our work with the community in TMP. So through the fisheries improvement program, through the alternative livelihood program, we can show all of this. You can read on my slide. But basically, monthly income and cost reduction on 2019, we can see already that the increase of 100,000 150% increase monthly income from the targeted community, and also 75% reduction for their fuel. And a lot of example also in these pictures that we work with the community in TMP, like in Banggi, Berungus, Tigabu, etc. Interestingly about COVID, right? And we all know that during the movement control order in Malaysia, we are not allowed to go out, and we are not also allowed to go to the sea. So we are doing this assessment, initial assessment by phone, by communicate with them, Zoom call like this, etc. And we also make a video that is also probably you can see this link. You can find it in the video in the Netherlands as our donors, how we work with our rangers on the ground, still monitoring it, even though with the very precaution SOP during the COVID. So I'm going to say in here that definitely the initiation and assessment during COVID is important. For example, we know that it already significant decline of fish price along the food supply chains. One of the example that they are saying from the fishermen say that the fish catch are sold for like 50 to 70% lower than the price before the MCO. And also, for example, the balambangan, like we know the tenggiri is 10 ringgit per kilo, and now it's only like 3 ringgit per kilo. So that's why, according to the Fishermen Action Network, they said that because of this disruption of food supply chain, they're better to say that the fisherman is not going out fishing because the cost is really higher than the selling of the fish price itself. And from Semporna, we heard our colleague dive operator says that more bombs in Semporna. That is something that we need to address because this is a normal baseline. We need to have a baseline like this for further approach. I think that's all. Julian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Monique. That's great. I'm going to go straight to Klaus, except first I'll just say I find it interesting that the supply of fish is going down post-COVID or because of COVID, but also the price is going down. Normally supply and demand, when supply goes down, price will go up, but you're suggesting people are not going fishing, so supply is going down, but the price is going up. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we're done. For now, the third speaker we have is Klass Jan Teule. Sorry again if I got your name wrong, Klass. Klass is the leader of the WWF-Coral Triangle program. It's based in Jakarta. He's going to talk about his work and perhaps a little bit about the wider needs of the Coral Triangle, because we've focused on Indonesia a little bit. There are other parts involved as well. Klass, over to you.
Thank you, Julian, and good morning to all. Glad to be on this early morning call, celebration call for the Coral Triangle initiative on coral reef food security and fisheries. So I'd like to present a couple of slides that is more related to the international collaboration. That is what we actually are celebrating today, and also reminding us of why is it so important to work together in the region to protect coral triangle. So as you can see, and Julian hinted at that, there are 6 governments involved, 6 countries involved in the Coral Triangle, parts of the Coral Triangle within their territorial waters. And this light blue center, what you see is sort of where all the biodiversity of the Coral Triangle comes together and explodes in these high numbers that have been presented, both coral reefs, mangroves, fish, so you name it. This is the biodiversity, marine biodiversity hotspot of the world. So about 12-14 years ago, governments and NGOs work together on how can we look at this area and see it as a common asset that needs to be looked after. A lot of the problems that the region was facing at that time was a lot of illegal fishing, especially on the live reef fish trade that feeded the mainland of Asia for a large part. Upcoming tourism put a huge pressure on some of the areas what we see in the region, and also, as mentioned by Hesti, the marine waste, the plastic, which is of course not bound by any country. It just flows with the currents. So this area, for many reasons, need to be looked at beyond the national boundaries. The 6 countries recognize that. And through the leadership of the 6 countries, they came together around an initiative which is very unique, actually, a conservation initiative on this scale and for this purpose. But as you can see, besides the scientific boundary, the light blue part of this map, there is of course a huge, this area is of a huge importance for a much larger part of the world, and I'm not even counting on the markets that are out there in the EU and the US, who like to consume fish from this part of the world, or who like to bring tourists to this part of the world. But you see this direct influence from countries like China, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, Australia. They all have a relation with this area, and a good example is the booming tourism. We see a real shift in tourism where mass tourism is much more coming from the region itself into the Coral Triangle and going to places that are very vulnerable and sensitive to exploitation. So this is a map that reminds us all that conservation doesn't stop at boundaries, while a lot of conservation work needs to be done on the ground, as shown by our previous speakers. But at the same time, we need to look at this area as a whole and see how can we avoid these threats that are currently happening, affecting this place. So with that sort of introduction to the Coral Triangle, the governments, as I said, they came together in 2009 in Manado, Indonesia. Please visit the place, it's beautiful. It's on the northern tip of Sulawesi Island. They came together in 2009, signing a declaration, heads of state, meaning it has the highest buy-in and commitment from the governments to come together around this initiative. And put a focus on conservation and sustainable managing of marine and coastal resources, which is of course a very important and at that time a very forward-looking thing to do. So the building that you see is the permanent secretariat that was opened, if I'm not mistaken, about 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago. So this secretariat is another commitment that the governments show to the world, that this is not just a paper declaration, this is not just a paper initiative. it is backed up by a structure and a government structure that is supported by all 6 governments, and that tries to coordinate the work that is happening across the region with a multiple amount of partners, and I show that in the next slide. So this initiative, besides the governments leading the initiative and sort of providing the umbrella for all the work that is happening in the Coral Triangle, as presented by our previous speakers. For WWF as a conservation organization operating in many of the countries that have a link with the Coral Triangle, we see this as incredibly important. There's of course a lot of issues that need to be tackled globally or regionally, and we think and believe that the Coral Triangle Initiative, the government-led initiative, is a perfect vehicle and platform to work on issues that go sometimes beyond countries. Not saying capacities, but countries' mandates itself. As you look at dealing with illegal fishing, if you look at waste, climate change impacts, and now very importantly, as indicated by Monique, how is the region going to respond on post-COVID? What does it mean for food security? How can we ensure that coastal communities in the region are provided with the resources, how they are resilient against these shocks that are happened because of a pandemic as we're currently experiencing? But also, how can we, at a regional level, provide solutions and learn from each other on dealing with marine waste? There's so many communities out there on small islands that depend on tourism, and maybe in the future much more domestic tourism, because the international travel is severely restricted. But how do these communities, how can they manage their waste? How can they manage their plastic problems so that their tourism, which is their income generator, is not going to be affected? So we see this collaboration both from governments as development partners and a wide variety of collaborators, which includes many universities, many stakeholders in Malaysia, Indonesia, in the region, as a great platform to start to trying to address these challenges and these threats that the region is experiencing. So I leave it at that, Julian. Oh, sorry, one more. So what is it then that sort of provides a reference to all this work? Currently, the regional secretariat, the CTI-CFF, is developing a regional plan of action. This is the second regional plan of action, and we, as partners, as shown before in the slide, are working with the secretariat to make this this plan of action as relevant and as solution oriented as possible. A large function, or a very important function of the secretariat, is that countries can learn from each other, work with each other. So there's a lot of focus on the regional exchanges, how to manage marine protected areas, how to work with coastal communities, how to ensure food security. So we see this as a very important function to not only set great targets, but also facilitate collaborations in a very large region with so many different aspects that can be of influence for each other. So I leave it at that, Julian. Any questions? Happy to take. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Klass. One thing you just said about how varied the region is struck me yesterday when I was thinking about this. We moved from the very developed island of Singapore, the kind of developed Malaysia, through to areas of the eastern part of the area where levels of development are much lower. There's a couple of things that people have talked about just there, which kind of interesting. Sustainable tourism. Klass, I was interested. You said that mass tourism has been the trend, but everything that we're hearing now suggests that the era of mass tourism is at an end. There is not going to be a return of the numbers, the volumes we've seen, at least not for a very long time. Simply because people are scared to travel, they're scared to gather in big groups. We're being told by our tourism specialists that we can expect a new sort of tourism, which is very niche, it's very small scale. People are looking for a real authentic experience. So the mass tourism destinations are going to have some problems. But so are the rest of us, because the numbers that we used to rely on for funding are not going to be there anymore. So, a lot of marine conservation funding is funded from tourism user fees or variants thereof, and that's not going to be around. Hesti, I wanted to come back to you because you're talking about capacity development amongst local people. How is this change in tourism going to affect the groups that you're working with?
Our work on the ground is actually working. We also try now have local champions working on the ground, and we try to also introduce this basic marine tourism, and also we provide also training for our key stakeholders in our MPA field learning sites to make sure that they also understand the concept and how to implement that. We are still working on that. So I think it's only like not only solely investing on community, we also work with the dive operators. For example, like in the Sapnida, we, because the area is quite intensive tourism activities now, because people are maybe a little bit boring with Bali, and they shift to Nusa Penida now. And we have like more like 3,000 visitors coming to Nusa Penida and knowing this is the marine protected area. And that's why we also work with the local communities to train them and to not only train, but also engage them in patrolling and tourism activities. We build code of conducts together with the communities, but also I think dive operators as the private sectors play a very important role. They are the one, some of the dive operators actually we're working on is in the Salembongan are actually established by local communities. So it's a great chance to also introduce that kind of voluntary work related to marine tourism activities. Not only the principles of sustainable marine tourism that we introduce to the communities, but also how for them how to actually monitor the change and participate them into the joint patrol surveillance activities with the local communities.
Okay, with the local communities is a thing that we're very interested in. My opinion is that in Malaysia we could do more to include local communities in marine conservation. Monique, I'll put you on the spot. Do you agree or not?
Yes, I agree, and also I think I can support the Sabah state government on their statement earlier about this is the time to fix all the infrastructure on tourism, where when it's the tourism come back, they will be ready. But the thing is how they need to fix that infrastructure is with the sustainable way, with the sustainably looking on the area of the habitat of coastal area. Like, for example, not building in jetty in the area of seagrass or the coral reef, because before that happens. So that is the area where we can also work together with the government.
Crikey, yeah. But in remote areas where tourism is growing without a lot of control and management, it's kind of difficult to make those ideas stick because it's convenient. It's what's convenient in the local area. One of the islands we work in has seen an increase of to 3,000 visitors a day. Tiny island, 3,000 people a day, completely unsustainable. But there's not a lot of, you don't see a lot of influence to manage that tourism very well. Klass, you mentioned the new plan of action. How much of that is going to talk about tourism and how much is going to look at these issues of a changing tourism where numbers are reducing, incomes are reducing, personal incomes are reducing? Does the plan of action cover that much, or is it kind of too early for it?
Well, it is a good question, because as many of our plans were designed or are in process of designing with a post-COVID world as the reality, and now that has to change. And What I think will happen is that many of our strategies and also of our partners will sort of take into account the resilience of coastal communities. Tourism is, of course, one important element when it is building local economies, but at the same time, food security. So how can we ensure the food, there is food on the table, fish on the table for the coastal communities? How can we ensure coastal communities are part of management, as you mentioned, critically important to include. And some countries can, and that's why, hence again, this learning from each other, the influence of coastal communities in management of areas in the Pacific, for example, is a great example on how that can be learned from in other parts of the Coral Triangle. But yeah, I think the WWF itself is also was also caught by this pandemic, and we were really looking at a couple of months ago and how to be part of how to influence the mass tourism going to these very vulnerable places. But now with this changing world and with an unsure tourism development ahead of us that might much more focus on domestic tourism and trying to keep the tourists in the countries and bring them to the places. There will be a lot of awareness raising, working with communities on providing best practices, and therefore creating hopefully a much more sustainable and less impactful type of tourism.
I'd like to see people involved in monitoring as well. I mean, our reefs have been closed now since effectively before monsoon, so October, November last year. So it's not just the last 3 months, they've been closed now for 6, 7, 8 months. What are we seeing as changes? People are saying there's more fish. What else is happening? And how much does that tell us about the value of closing sites to keep tourists away completely? We've got 3 minutes left. Hesti, give us your last thoughts on where all of this needs to go. What can we do better? What should be the focus be for the next 5 to 10 years? Very quickly. I feel like a radio host.
Video. Okay. I think we need to make solution actions. We need to invest in people who can make informed decision, set policy, influence behavior, transform business, generate revenue, and innovate technology in all sectors. And also we need to document cost benefit analysis and present this into our policy and decision maker. We need to work with private sector on zero waste packaging whenever possible, but also create campaign and connect with global coalition, because we need to work together to make this action really happening on the ground and make impact.
We didn't even talk about plastic yet, and we've only got 2 minutes left. So I'm going to throw that at you, Monique. In the scale of things, fish bombing, overfishing, tourism development, where does plastic fit? Is it that big a problem considering everything else, or what? Ooh, unfair, I know, but there you go.
I'm on mute. Yes, definitely. That is not a small problem. Definitely, that is a quite serious and significant problem to the area and the community and habitat, as well as to the community itself. Because microplastic, you cannot see, but it's around in our water drinking, right? So definitely, an action should be taken for that as well. Again, as a baseline on how to give it to the community about that. One more thing that I'm going to say about this, if we stop our activity, normal activity for at least only 2 weeks, this is what happened during our post-COVID MCO control order or lockdown or whatever you call it, the resources is slowly coming back. You can ask them, they say that the fish are out there a lot, right? But they cannot sell it. And also the thing is why they are still using the bomb. That is our question. That is our more challenge about this after this, right? Is it about because of the laziness? Is that because the fish is out there coming back and there are a lot of fish there? You don't need to use the cyanide and fish bombing anymore. So I guess that is my point and our challenge together to work together. Thank you, Julian.
So it sounds as though fish bombing is more important than plastic to Monique.
Yes.
Klass, a final word in 30 seconds, and then we're done.
Similarly.
Okay.
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, so I think the challenge for the next 10 years is very much in line. What Hesti is saying is how can we work with huge numbers of communities across the Coral Triangle in managing coastal marine resources. We are setting ourselves up as organizations and as governments with very ambitious targets for 2030. We need to answer the situation post-COVID, how the world will look like. But to me, it comes down to including many coastal communities in managing resources, so to create this resilience at the local level. And that will be a huge effort for which we need this partnership, and hopefully we can help deliver that under the Coral Triangle Initiative. Over.
Okay, Klass, thank you very much for those final words. My clock says it's 8:50. You need to go and get in the car. I have a day to get on with, and I'm sure Hesti and Monique do. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you to the organizers for this chance. Hopefully there'll be lots more to talk about. We can make our contacts available if necessary. But for now, I'm going to click the leave meeting box. I wish you all a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Triangle Day.
Thank you.